Hi, it's Mr. Bennett. In this video, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how humans have affected the planet. What changes have happened to the planet as a result of humans being on the planet? Now, the first thing you need to understand so we can understand how humans changed the planet is we need to think back to last unit when we talked about human population growth and how the population of humans on the planet has grown exponentially. That we're adding another billion people to the planet every 12 to 14 years. And because we're adding so many people to the planet, that has big effects because every 12 years we have another billion people on the planet that need something to drink, something to eat, and some place to live. And so that's going to have a big effect on the planet. Now, the other thing that I taught you is that no population can grow exponentially forever, that eventually a population hits its carrying capacity, at which point that population has to shrink. It's going to go back down. Well, when it comes to carrying capacity of humans, we don't have a good handle on it because every time we invent a new technology, the carrying capacity of the planet goes up for us. That every time we have a new invention in agriculture or medicine or so forth, we make it so more people can live on the planet. And so the carrying capacity of humans has gone up with the invention of technology, but eventually we are going to run into some limiting factors. We're going to run into some things that are going to limit human population. And a good way to identify what some of those limiting factors are going to be is to look at the idea of renewable versus non-renewable resources. That this gives us an idea of what some of the limiting factors will be because understanding which resources are renewable and which resources are non-renewable help us understand what we're going to run out of first, and the things that we're going to run out of could potentially be limiting factors that slow down human population growth. So let's go back and let's define what a renewable resource is. A renewable resource, pure and simple, is something that you can renew or you can get more of. A renewable resource is something that is being made faster than you're using it. And examples of renewable resources are things like wind, sunlight, water, so on and so forth that way. We're never going to run out of wind. Whenever you use the wind, they always make more. We're not going to run out of sunlight for a few billion years until the sun decides to go bye-bye and turn off. That's a renewable resource. Every time we use sun, there's going to be some more there. We're never going to run out of water. Now, we can pollute water and make it so we can't drink it anymore, but the water that's on the planet has been here for 4 billion years. It's not going anywhere. So a renewable resource is something that you can't use it up because it's being made faster than you're using it. The opposite of a renewable resource, of course, is going to be a non-renewable resource. A non-renewable resource is something that you are using up faster than you're getting more of it. Classic example of this is going to be like oil and coal. That we are currently using oil and coal faster than it is being made. Oil and coal are made naturally. They're made from the remains of dead plants and dead animals that have been dead for thousands of years. It takes thousands of years to make a barrel of oil. Well, the problem is we're not given it thousands of years to make more. We use 80 million barrels of oil every day. We're sucking oil out of the ground far faster than it's being made naturally. So this is an example of a non-renewable resource. Now, what makes something non-renewable or non-renewable all comes down to how fast we're using it. If we cut way back on our oil supplies, we could actually make oil a renewable resource, but we'd have to cut back how much oil we use by 100,000 times. And that's not something we're ready to do right now. Now, understanding that what makes something a renewable or a non-renewable resource is how fast you use it helps you understand that some resources actually fall into a gray zone. They can be renewable or they can be non-renewable. Trees are quite often given as an example of a renewable resource because if you cut a tree down, you can always grow another one. So that would make it a renewable resource if you're not cutting the trees down any faster than the trees grow. If we go in and we go to all the forests and we cut them down and we make them look like this, we just made trees a non-renewable resource because we cut them down faster than the trees can grow. And so something can be a renewable or it can be a non-renewable resource, and it all depends on how fast you use it. Things like plants and animals and trees. These are things that could go either way. They could be renewable or non-renewable based on how fast we are using them. One of the biggest ways that humans have impacted the planet is by using more land. As human population has grown, we've needed more food and more places for people to live. And so the result of that is we build big cities and we build big farms. We need big farms to grow the food we need to feed 7 billion people, and we build big cities because everybody needs a place to sleep at night. Well, the problem with this is as we make more farmland and as we make more cities, all of this used to be natural habitat. This farmland here all used to be a temperate grassland that naturally had things like bison and so forth living on it. It doesn't have bison living on it anymore because instead of this land being used by nature for animals and so forth, it's being used only for humans. Same thing with this city over here, this suburban. This used to all be a forest. We cut the trees down and now we've got nothing there but houses. And so this area that used to be available for living things to live there, now it's just got houses on it. So this is one of the #1 ways that humans affect the planet, is as we use up more land for farms to grow food and for cities so we have a place for people to live. This has a big effect on the planet. Now what it does is it leads to habitat destruction. That when humans move into an area and we decide that we need that land for more farms or more places to live, we destroy the natural habitat. Here you can see a forest that has gone in and humans have destroyed it. We've cut the trees down, we got rid of it. And all the living things that used to live here, they're screwed. They don't have a place to live anymore because of increase in human population. Humans need this land now so that we can survive, and so the animals, they get the short end of the stick as a result. Now, as we go about when we destroy habitat, that leads to a loss of biodiversity. That when we go into an area like this and we destroy all the trees and we destroy the habitat, no longer can the animals that live there anymore. And eventually what happens is if you make the habitat too small, some of these larger animals can't survive there anymore because there's just not enough food for them. And so we lose biodiversity. Loss of biodiversity means we're losing species. Species are going extinct. And the reason why we care about that is because the more species you get rid of, the more fragile this ecosystem becomes, because a food web is more stable than a food chain. If you just have a food chain and you wipe out one species, everything that's there dies. But if you have a food web with lots of creatures, if one species happens to get in a little bit of trouble, it doesn't affect everything above it because you have a food web and a food chain. So loss of biodiversity, this is something that is direct result of habitat destruction. Species are going extinct because humans were just using their land. Now, two big ways that we have a loss of habitat is deforestation. We go in and we cut down the forest and we either turn it into a farm or we turn it into houses because we need the land to feed a growing population. So this is one form of habitat destruction. This one seems pretty simple. Another way that humans do this is by desertification. The amount of desert that's on the planet is growing every year. Here, what you're looking at here, this is the boundary between the Sahara Desert and the tropical savanna. Here's the desert, here's the savanna. Now if you come back and look at this picture a few years later, you'll see that the desert is up here. That every year the Sahara Desert grows bigger and bigger. This yellow area here, this is where the Sahara Desert used to be. This brown area is where the Sahara Desert is now, and then this striped area down here is where we're predicting the Sahara Desert is going to grow to in the next couple hundred years. Now, why is the reason why deserts grow? It's because humans are using the water for other things. That the water that used to go to grow trees and grass and so on here is being used up by humans because we need it for drinking and we also need it for agriculture. And so deforestation and desertification, these are two big ways that humans destroy habitats. Another big way that humans destroy habitats is through erosion. When humans come into an area and we clear out the natural ecosystem and we convert that area into farmland, sometimes what can happen is because we got rid of all the trees and so forth, we've made the area more vulnerable to erosion. And erosion is when wind or water removes the soil. So here you can see some erosion. This water is going through this field. Because the water is going through the field, it's removing the dirt, washing it downstream. That's erosion by water. Here's some hardcore example of erosion where they went in and they cut out the trees, and because they cut out the trees, the soil can now be washed away by the water when it came through. And then here you got the famous Dust Bowl pictures from America in the 30s. We went in and we plowed up all the prairie, and we got rid of all the grass and we planted crops there. Well, once we harvested the crops, a big windstorm came and blew the soil away. It was gone. So erosion is a big thing where humans affect the planet because if we just go in and we cut the trees down, the forest could potentially come back. But once erosion happens and it gets rid of all the soil, you can't have the trees grow back in there because they don't have the dirt that they need to grow. So when humans come in and use land, quite often that land can never go back to its native ecosystem because the erosion that happens as a result of us using the land makes it impossible for the native plants to come back. Other big area where humans have a big effect on the planet is some of the chemicals that we use. That there are certain chemicals that humans use every day that are essential for life, that without them we'd be in trouble. Well, the problem is some of these chemicals can have very nasty effects on the environment. They're great for humans, but they also make it so other animals and plants get harmed as well. Now, the most pressing example of this right now is climate change, and we talked about this a few units ago, that as humans have been using the chemical oil and we've been burning it, we're releasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide levels have gone up, and as carbon dioxide levels have gone up, these bars here show the average temperature on the planet. You can see as we're using chemicals for energy and as a result releasing carbon dioxide in the air, average temperature has gone up. We already covered this a couple of units ago. I'm going to mention a couple other chemicals that humans have used that have had a pretty nasty effect on the planet as well. First one we need to talk about is the depletion of the ozone layer. This picture you're looking at right here, this is based on satellite imagery, and this purple area right here, this is the hole in the ozone layer. This is a place where part of the atmosphere has been removed as a result of human activity, and it's what's called the hole in the ozone layer. It's in the very southern part of the world. Well, what caused this depletion of the ozone layer, and why do we care? Well, the first thing you need to understand is the ozone layer is way up there in the sky, okay? It is 6 to 12 miles above where you're standing right now. So 6 to 12 miles above the surface of the Earth is where the ozone layer is, and what the ozone layer does is it blocks some of the light that comes in from the sun. That the sun releases UV rays, and these UV rays can cause cancer and all sorts of other nasty things. Well, the ozone layer blocks these UV rays. It absorbs them so they don't make it to the surface of the Earth, and that's a good thing. If the ozone layer was gone, we'd all have like skin cancer tomorrow and we'd be dead because UV rays are very harmful to DNA. Well, the problem is we got a hole in the ozone layer. Where did this hole come from? Well, humans once again are to blame. What happened is humans made a chemical called chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. And what these CFCs, and the common name for them is Freon, were used for is refrigeration. The first refrigerators, the first air conditioners, even some of the pressurized stuff that made it so hairspray came out of a can, all had these CFCs or Freon in it. Now without Freon, we couldn't keep things cool, and we made lots of refrigerators and air conditioning units that had Freon in them. Well, the problem happened is when a refrigerator broke or an air conditioning unit broke, and that Freon leaked out of the AC or the refrigerator, that Freon got caught up in the atmosphere where it went into the ozone layer. And when this Freon, or CFCs, made it to the ozone layer, they destroyed the ozone layer. Ozone is a molecule made of 3 oxygen molecules bound together. That's what makes up the ozone layer, is this molecule called ozone. Well, CFCs get up there and they actually destroy ozone. They tear it apart. So what you're left with is chloride and oxygen bound together and 2 oxygens bound together. And that is what has caused the hole in the ozone layer. This hole right here is caused a result of humans using these chemicals called CFCs, which have gone up into the atmosphere and they've destroyed the ozone layer. And because we've destroyed the ozone layer, or part of it, more of the sun's harmful UV light makes it to the Earth. And if you go to like places in southern Argentina and so forth, they have an extremely high rate of skin cancer because more of the damaging light from the sun makes it down to the Earth. Now, Freon used to be extremely popular. I remember as a kid, Dad would buy this stuff by the case to keep the air conditioner running in his cars and in his tractors. Well, in the early 90s, we went ahead and we banned the production of Freon, and so all Freon had replaced with this stuff, R134A. This is what you put in your car now to make the air conditioning run. And R134A will make it so you can still have air conditioning, but it doesn't release, R134A won't go up into the air and destroy the ozone layer. And so this is what we've replaced it with in the United States. Well, if we got rid of it in the United States, why is this hole in the ozone layer still there? The reason for that is because Freon is not banned anywhere. You can drive to Mexico right now and go buy a case of this stuff. And so the United States and Europe banned it, but not every country has banned it. And so as a result of that, humans are still releasing this Freon into the air, which is going up and punching a hole in our ozone layer, which eventually is going to make it so we all have skin cancer. Fun things to think about. Last human effect on the planet that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about pesticide and herbicide use. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, a pesticide is something that kills an animal or a bug or something that's affecting you. An herbicide is a chemical that kills a plant, like weeds and so forth. And we're very familiar. We've all seen this. We've all been out spraying our lawns. We've all seen farmers go out and spray these pesticides and herbicides. Now, it may not seem like a big deal that, yay, we're just spraying this chemical out there, but we're not spraying very much of it. Well, it can cause a big deal through the process that's called biomagnification. Biomagnification is the idea that's been proven by several experiments that the higher up a food chain you go, the more of that chemical will accumulate. So let's say we go out and we spray some pesticides and some of it gets in the water. Because we didn't spray very much of it, there's not going to be very much of that pesticide in the water. Well, the problem you're going to have is the plants that live in that water are going to absorb some of that pesticide. And because they absorb it, it's going to accumulate inside of the body of the producers. Then you have your primary consumers come in and eat the plants, and the consumers are eating these plants which have a slightly more concentrated version of the chemical in them. Because the consumers are eating plants that have even more of the chemical in them, that makes it so the consumers have even more in them yet. And then a secondary consumer eats your primary consumer and gets exposed to even more of the chemical, then a tertiary, and then eventually a quaternary consumer comes in and eats them and gets a huge load of the chemical. So biomagnification is the idea that the higher up the food chain you go, the higher doses of these chemicals the animal's going to be exposed to. And if you just think about it, it makes sense that a little small primary consumer like a zooplankton may have an area that's that big that it lives in its entire life. And so this zooplankton is only going to be exposed to the chemical that falls to an area that big. But if you think about something like a bald eagle can have a range of 50 miles. And so this bald eagle is going to be exposed to all the chemicals that was sprayed in that 50-mile process. And so this is a process of biomagnification, that even if we only put a chemical on the things at a very low level, because of the natural accumulation that happens as a result of going up a food chain, the things that live at the top of the food chain are going to get a really high dose because they're going to be exposed to all the chemical that was sprayed in their particular ecosystem. Now, the most famous example of biomagnification involves a chemical called DDT. DDT was around in the 60s and the 70s, and it was a chemical that was a wonder chemical that killed mosquitoes. Mosquitoes kill millions of people every year by spreading the disease malaria and yellow fever and dengue fever and so forth. And so DDT, we sprayed this crap everywhere because it kills mosquitoes, and like, hey, we're going to cure the planet of malaria. Well, the problem is DDT is toxic. Now, at the levels it was in the ecosystem, it wasn't toxic to big animals until it got absorbed by plants, consumers, and eventually what happened is we first noticed the bad effects of DDT when large birds of prey like eagles and falcons started laying these eggs that had really thin shells. Because they had thin shells, when the mama bird would sit on the egg to incubate it, it would crush it. And so as a result of DDT, America's national bird, the bald eagle, almost went extinct in America because so many of them died as a result of the DDT. Now, the eagles weren't dying because they were hanging out underneath a plane and getting sprayed by it. An eagle could be right here and get sprayed by this plane, and it would not kill the eagle, but because the food that the eagle was eating had more and more levels of DDT in it, eventually what happened is it made it so their eggs were thin, they crushed them, birds couldn't reproduce anymore, and the population went almost extinct. And so this is another example of where humans have had a bad effect on the environment by spreading pesticide and herbicides.